Her future daughter-in-law hid her glasses on the morning of the wedding. June Hartley, retired librarian and widow, didn't panic. Tessa floated through the house in white lace and cruelty, assuming she'd blinded the matriarch. By sunset, June's signature had erased her from the trust, the will, and the deed to the family home. She'd once welcomed her like kin, now she labeled her as risk. And when Tessa finally came to claim her prize, the safe was already locked. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The morning sun broke through the curtains like judgment. Harsh, unrelenting, too bright for a day that already felt tilted. June Hartley sat on the edge of her bed, one hand resting on her lap, the other patting the nightstand with slow precision. No glasses. She reached again, carefully sweeping her palm across the cool wood surface. Her fingers landed on the corner of the wedding card she'd written for Connor stationery she had chosen a week ago, script practiced in full light. Now all she could see was a blur of ink and cream. Her throat tightened, not panic, something colder, controlled. She walked to her vanity and opened the drawer. Empty, except for a stray earring and a lint-covered cough drop. The reading glasses were always there. Always. She moved through the house in silence. Dining room, kitchen, the bathroom drawer. Nothing. Her hands moved with surgical calm, but inside, her pulse had begun to tap out a steady, skeptical rhythm. She opened the fridge as if her glasses might be resting beside the almond milk. They weren't. But footsteps clicked across the hardwood behind her. Tessa's voice sliced through the air, honeyed and smug. "You don't need to read anything today, June. Just smile for the pictures." June didn't turn around. She didn't need to. Tessa swept by in a flash of ivory satin and hairspray, leaving behind a scent trail of artificial vanilla and entitlement. June caught the reflection of a smirk in the microwave's black glass as the bride-to-be floated into the hallway, humming a bit too loudly. The meaning landed like a stone in June's stomach. Not an accident. A move. June straightened, smoothed her sweater and walked back to her bedroom. She didn't touch the card again. Instead, she sat in her chair by the window, her mind sharpening with each passing second. The map in her head was still intact. Every clause, every instruction, every name. The clink of teacups filtered in from the kitchen, along with the faint sound of someone struggling with cellophane. "You're squinting," Greta said, appearing in the doorway with a plate of pastries and a judgmental eyebrow. "If you're trying to see into the future, use my readers. They're in my purse." June gave a small appreciative smile but didn't reach for them. "I'm fine," she said simply. Greta crossed her arms. "You're not, but I respect the lie." The front door creaked open and Addison's voice floated in, cheerful and apologetic all at once. "Sorry I'm late, Miss June. The florist forgot the peonies." Again. June turned as the 17-year-old bustled in, cheeks flushed from the July heat, her fingers stained with rose thorns and printer ink. She wore beat-up Converse and a dusty bridesmaid sweatshirt 3 sizes too big. Addison stopped short, noticing the card still in June's lap. "Want me to read that out loud for you?" she asked gently. June shook her head. "Not yet." "Okay." Addison nodded, then glanced toward the hallway. "She's been kinda extra today." June let out the faintest breath of agreement, then stood slowly, ignoring the pull in her hip. Out in the backyard, white folding chairs were being arranged with mathematical precision. The tent shimmered in the heat, its edges billowing like an illusion. Beneath it, tablecloths flapped and champagne flutes clinked. From this distance, June could make out Connor's silhouette, tall, slightly hunched, head bent toward his phone. Probably fielding last-minute requests, or more likely smoothing over one of Tessa's tiny emotional avalanches. June turned away and walked back down the hallway toward her bedroom, past the full-length mirror where a younger woman might have paused to adjust her pearls. She didn't pause. She went straight to the closet. Behind the shoe rack and cedar blocks sat the old wooden chest, untouched for years, except by her. She knelt with care, fingers brushing the combination dial on the attached safe. 3 clicks left, 2 right, 1 back, her vision blurred at the edges, but her hands were steady. The safe door gave a soft mechanical pop. Inside, nestled among manila folders and documents organized by color-coded tabs, was the estate binder, the one Marlene had prepared years ago and updated annually, a dark green cover with a discreet silver label. June pulled it out and rested it on the bed. No glasses, no problem. Her hand smoothed over the cover. She could feel every edge, every notch of preparation behind it. Tessa could hide glasses. She couldn't hide consequences. Behind her, in the hallway, the chandelier flickered as someone walked past. June's hand froze on the binder. The ceremony hadn't even started, but the real vows had already been made. The air outside buzzed with the kind of hollow laughter that sounded rehearsed. From her bedroom, June heard champagne corks popping. Somewhere in the backyard tent, Tessa's voice rose with performative warmth, thanking people for showing up even in this ridiculous heat, as if Spokane summers hadn't always been like this. June sat on the edge of her bed, estate binder open in front of her, cell phone pressed to her ear. The line rang twice. Marlene Jacobs, came the voice on the other end, steady, clipped, without preamble. "It's June," she said. "We might need to revisit that clause we discussed." Her voice was quiet, but not tentative. A pause. Then the one about revocation rights and pre-inheritance exclusions. "Yes," June replied, fingers resting lightly on the smooth edge of the legal folder. "I want to move forward on it. Today. I can make it binding in an hour. I'll send the doc to your printer. You'll need someone you trust to witness and assist. No mistakes." June glanced toward the hallway, where the sounds of clinking glassware and surface-level toasts floated in. "I already have someone." She ended the call and walked to her desk. Her printer sat under a dusty frame that read, "What you allow is what will continue." She pressed the power button. It whirred to life like a grumpy old dog. "Addison." She called down the hall. "I need your help with something." The girl appeared moments later, cheeks flushed, a bit of icing smudged near her elbow. "Sure. What's up?" "Close the door." Addison obeyed without question. June handed her a USB drive and an envelope. "I need this printed and reassembled. 2 copies, no page skipped, no staples, then one signed with me." Addison looked down at the document's title. Her eyebrows lifted, but she said nothing, just nodded. "You got it." As the printer came alive, Tessa's voice piped in from the living room. "Don't forget to tag me, okay? At Mrs. Hartley Official, with 2 FAS." June turned, walked calmly toward her tablet. She tapped open the Instagram feed. A photo from last night's rehearsal dinner was already posted. Tessa in a fitted white dress, Connor beside her in a charcoal gray suit. Family lined up behind them. All smiles. Except June wasn't in the frame, cropped out neatly, like a coffee stain. Greta entered carrying a mug of what she claimed was ceremonial coffee, but smelled suspiciously like Irish cream. She set it down, glanced at the screen and snorted. "Appetite, not loyalty," she muttered. "That girl's chewing through this family like it's a buffet." June didn't argue. She opened her messages. One unread text blinked from Connor. "Please don't cause stress today. Just let her have her moment." June read it twice, then typed back with calm fingers. "I never do. I just remember." The reply sent instantly. Addison reappeared with the updated will, neatly clipped in a new folder. She handed it to June like it was a weapon. "You sure?" the girl asked quietly. June didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." They sat together at the kitchen table. June signed every page with steady, practiced motion. Addison signed the witness line with a Sharpie she pulled from her hoodie pocket. The doorbell rang. Another delivery. No doubt. Tessa's special order cupcakes, or someone's monogrammed linen napkins. June ignored it. She slid the updated will into her leather purse. The weight of it settled like a stone, or a verdict. She looked out the window at the shimmering tent, white petals curling under the weight of sun and ego. Inside that purse was a future rewritten, no Tessa, no access, no loopholes. The crystal glass felt cool in June's hand, but her fingers held it with unshakable steadiness. Conversations swirled around her like perfume, sweet, rehearsed, and heavy. The tent glowed gold from strung lights that sagged slightly under the weight of humidity and over-expectation. A hired DJ whispered something into a microphone that made the younger guests laugh too hard. She rose slowly, the silk of her slate-gray dress whispering as she stood. The clink of her glass against the microphone cut the noise. "May I?" she asked, though no one could have stopped her. Connor nodded quickly from the head table. Tessa adjusted the strap of her designer gown and smiled like someone bracing for applause. June's voice was low, deliberate. "Weddings, if nothing else, are about memory, not just of who we were, but who we've chosen to become. I've watched my son grow into a man who listens more than he speaks, who stands quietly behind others, but always shows up. He has the kind of patience that builds legacy." Connor's eyes softened, his mouth parting just slightly. Tessa leaned forward. "I've always told him, love should never be performative. It should be present, steady, real." June let that last word hang there. Real. No one blinked. She held the glass higher. "Eyes fours, win the cows. Win again, bro. To the kind of love that doesn't demand centerpieces or photo filters. To the kind that lingers long after the champagne is gone." And then she smiled and sat down. Not once did she say Tessa's name. The silence that followed was pregnant and brittle. Then a polite wave of applause. Chairs shuffled. Forks resumed scraping cake plates. Tessa blinked, her smile twitching like a glitch in a program. She leaned toward Connor and whispered something too low for the room, but not for Greta, who leaned sideways just enough to intercept. Greta didn't hide her grin. She gave June a slow, approving nod. That was a masterclass in subtext. June took a sip of her untouched wine. "I don't like repeating myself." Later, in the quieter pocket of the tent, June settled into the wicker lounge chair positioned perfectly for people watching. Overhead, the sky had shifted from molten gold to bruised lavender. Lights flickered like stars trying too hard. She heard the voice before she saw the shape. Tessa, just outside the catering tent, her laugh brittle and too loud. "She didn't even say my name." Tessa was saying. "Whatever, she's old. She won't remember anything by next week." Another voice joined. One of the bridesmaids, maybe. She probably thought she did. Greta appeared beside June, sliding into the chair like a sidekick, with timing honed by a lifetime of witnessing disasters unfold. "She just said you've got dementia," Greta muttered, picking at a mini quiche. "Adorable." June folded her hands over her lap, her thumb brushing the edge of her clutch. "Good. Then she won't see this coming." She stood again, slower this time. The pain in her hip ached like a quiet alarm, but she ignored it. Inside the house, her office was dim and cool. The windows were cracked slightly, letting in the scent of pine and citronella. June sat at her desk, eyes narrowing as the screen glowed to life. She opened her email. To Marlene Jacobs, subject, "Final will, confirmed body. Please consider this version my final and active filing. All signatures attached. Time stamped." She hit send. The whoosh was quiet, but it filled the room like thunder. A breeze rustled the curtains, carrying with it the echo of clinking glasses and hollow laughter from outside. The camera shutter clicked in rhythmic bursts, like a polite firing squad. From her spot inside the house, June could see them through the dining room window. Tessa in the center, flanked by bridesmaids in peach chiffon. Connor a few steps behind her, looking dazed but grinning. June's name had been on the list for group photos. She remembered the email from the photographer. Family matriarch shots. Now, she sat alone at the kitchen island, the cooling scent of coffee in her cup, waiting for an invitation that never came. Footsteps padded across the tile behind her. Addison entered, eyes wide with a mixture of caution and apology. "They, asked me to tell you to wait inside until the group stuff is done," she said, voice soft. "Something about lighting and spacing." June's gaze didn't leave the window. "Spacing, of course." Addison hesitated, then lifted her phone. "Want to see what they posted?" She flipped the screen around. A glossy Instagram story lit up with hearts and music, Tessa twirling in the sunlight, arms looped around her bridesmaids. At the top of the screen, white text scrolled Happy Family. Minus the extra, the word hit harder than it should have. Extra. June's mouth pulled into something between a smirk and a wince. You'd think I was a party favor. From behind, Greta's voice rang out. Then let's throw our own damn party. She strolled in carrying 2 glasses of sparkling cider and a paper plate with 3 different cheeses, none of which matched the catered menu. Stand up, June, she said. We're taking the only photo that matters. Addison perked up. Yes, I'll take it. Natural light's still good in the sunroom. June chuckled, surprised by how easily she obeyed. Greta draped an arm around her shoulder, and Addison clicked a few frames. Make sure we look like we just closed a deal on something important, Greta whispered. We did, June said, straightening. Legacy. Back in her office, June slid a new folder onto her desk. She labeled it by hand, Wedding Day Observations. Inside, she slipped the printed photo Addison had just taken, along with a copy of the guest list, a menu, and a screenshot of Tessa's social post. The pages clicked together with intention. The front door opened, and a gust of floral perfume signaled the arrival of Claire Madison, Tessa's mother. Claire floated into the living room like a guest star, making a late entrance. Her eyes passed over June like fog rolling across a windshield. No greeting, not even a nod. Greta stiffened beside the staircase, but June simply smiled. I see the resemblance, June said, her voice smooth as silk caught on glass. Claire paused, just long enough to wonder if she'd been insulted, then turned away with a tight smile. Connor entered moments later, his tie loosened, a wine glass in hand. He leaned into the kitchen where June stood, lowering his voice like a boy about to ask for a favor. Hey Mom, he said lightly. Tess and I were thinking, after the honeymoon, we'll probably start house hunting. Somewhere with space, maybe even here in Spokane. June nodded, unsurprised. We might need a little help with the down payment, he added too casually. Just until things even out. She stirred her coffee once, twice. The spoon clinked softly against the porcelain, marking time. The violinist missed a note. No one else noticed, but June did. She sat in the last row beneath the white tent, her back straight, hands resting on her lap like they were sewn there. Heat pooled around her ankles, trapped by the thick lawn and summer air. Behind her the caterers whispered as they refilled champagne flutes. In front nothing but pageantry. Tessa stood at the altar in a gleaming gown that shimmered with sequins and self-satisfaction. Her smile was wide, teeth perfect, posture pulled taut by years of posing. She basked in the camera clicks, soaking in the audience like a born performer. Connor stood beside her, looking dazed, obedient, a man who'd long since stopped questioning the script. June had no interest in the altar. Her gaze moved quietly across the rows, Tessa's family preening, neighbors sweltering in rented suits, Greta seated 2 chairs down, fanning herself with a wedding program and mouthing something sarcastic about the flower arrangements, a gentle nudge at her elbow. Addison. Her expression was half conspiratorial, half apologetic as she leaned in and whispered, Found these in the junk drawer. Might not be yours, but they work. She pressed a pair of scratched drugstore reading glasses into June's palm. June slid them on slowly. The world came into better focus, not perfect but passable, like looking through a smudged window. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. Not the new version that stayed locked away. This one held the older estate draft, the familiar weight of which grounded her. She thumbed through the pages quietly, not reading so much as remembering. It wasn't the text she needed. It was the presence of it. Proof of her voice on paper. The music shifted. Tessa began her vows, voice lifted and poised, designed for video clips. I promise to guide this family with grace, she said, turning slightly so her profile caught the best light. To carry the name Hartley into its next chapter with elegance and strength. As the new matriarch, Greta choked on her rosé, coughing hard enough to turn heads. June didn't blink. Matriarch. The word sat like a cracked dish at a perfect place setting. Addison side-eyed June, lips pressed together, waiting. June just folded the folder closed, glasses still perched on her nose. Tessa continued, weaving promises with lace and self-importance. When the officiant asked Connor for his vows, he mumbled through his part with the enthusiasm of a man reading from a warranty pamphlet. Applause followed anyway. The kiss was theatrical. The exit music swelled. Confetti cannons fired. By the time the guests were clapping, June was already standing. She moved away from the tent without fanfare, her heels pressing soft prints into the grass. The heat on her skin turned slick with each step, but her spine stayed straight. As she reached the side door of the house, Greta called after her, but June waved her off gently. She passed the foyer, ignoring the photos Tessa had rearranged 2 days ago so her own engagement shot sat at the center of the display. She climbed the stairs slowly, her fingers brushing the railing as if retracing old years. In her room she moved straight to the closet. The safe responded to her touch like it had waited all day for this moment. The green binder came out, smooth and final. June placed it on her bed, flipped to the last tab, and checked the signature page. Her thumb rested on Addison's witness line, her own name above it, bold and clean. She exhaled through her nose, not relief, something cooler, completion. The door creaked behind her. Tessa stood in the doorway, veil pushed back, still in full bridal armor. Her tone dripped with cheerfulness, meant to disguise conquest. Just making sure you didn't miss anything, she said. June didn't flinch. The binder sat open in plain sight. Tessa's gaze flicked to it, then back to June's face. Her smile held. The binder sat open like a split-vein green cover stark against the ivory quilt of June's bed. Legal tabs peeked out like sharpened teeth. Sunlight from the bedroom window struck the silver lettering on the first page, Hartley Estate, final filing. Tessa didn't move from the threshold. Her perfectly airbrushed face twitched at the edges, like her features weren't sure which expression to land on. "You're changing things?" she asked. Voice too high, too careful. On today of all days? June looked up, glasses still perched at the tip of her nose, calm, composed. "No," she replied softly, eyes meeting Tessa's without a flinch. "I already did." Tessa's mouth parted just slightly, words cued and lost in the shuffle. Her gaze darted from the binder to June's expression, trying to find a crack. There wasn't one. A gust of pine-scented air drifted through the open window. Outside, the sound of distant applause and champagne corks suggested that the guests had moved on to toasts and cake. In here, it was silent as a courtroom. June reached out and closed the binder with slow, deliberate care. The clasp clicked into place with a satisfying snap. Then she stood, walked past Tessa without a single word, and placed the binder back inside the safe. She spun the dial, left, right, back again, her fingers fluid with long memory. By the time she turned back around, Tessa hadn't moved. "You don't need to worry about the will," June said. Tone even, "worry about your vows. The rest is already settled." Before Tessa could speak again, there was a light knock, and Greta stepped in with 2 teacups balanced on a wooden tray. "I brought chamomile, or what the label claims is chamomile," she said, setting the tray down on the dresser. Her eyes flitted to Tessa, then back to June. Did she blink first? June smiled faintly. She never stopped blinking. Tessa turned sharply on her heels and stormed down the hall, stilettos hitting the hardwood like gunfire. Her voice echoed from the stairwell. "Connor, she's trying to cut me out. She's sitting upstairs rewriting her damn life." Greta took a sip and nodded toward the door. "Guess she found the altitude a little thin up here." Downstairs, muffled voices rose. Connor, caught between loyalty and peacekeeping, answered flatly, "It's not her day to deal with, Tess. Let it go." June didn't move to the window this time. She didn't need to see it unfold. Some truths didn't need eyes. They came wrapped in tone, in silence, in what wasn't said. She stepped back toward her desk and reached for her phone. A message blinked on the screen from Marlene. "Marlene Jacobs, all documents are filed. Timestamp confirmed. Effective immediately." June read it once, then locked her screen with a quiet exhale. The reception tent buzzed with artificial warmth, Fairy lights twinkled against the dusk, silverware gleamed, and curated playlists spun songs no one really listened to. But June noticed the details that weren't meant to be seen. Like her name missing from the place cards at the front table. Like her assigned seat nestled near the kitchen doors, where waitstaff bustled and the scent of seared meat fought with floral centerpieces. She stood quietly at the edge of the seating chart display, scanning. Her name, Mrs. June Hartley, was nestled somewhere between Uncle Harold and +1 Lindsay. That particular corner of the tent was already darkened by shadows and steam from the caterer's prep station. Greta approached with a slow burn in her step and a glass of white wine in her hand. "Tell me that's a joke," she muttered, eyeing the card. June didn't answer. She didn't need to. Addison trotted up beside them, her phone half out of her hoodie pocket and mischief already sparking in her eyes. "I brought tape," she whispered, pulling a roll of painter's tape from her pocket like it was contraband. "Want to see a miracle?" June raised an eyebrow. "I assume this miracle includes mischief?" "Strategic placement," Addison corrected. 10 minutes later, the tent had subtly rewritten itself. Greta had stealthily removed June's name card from the back row and swapped it with an empty seat beside the father of the groom, front and center, where cameras would roll and speeches would land. June walked to the new seat like she'd always belonged there. No fuss, no apology. Tessa spotted it from across the tent. Her lips pinched tight as her gaze locked onto June seated at her father's right. For a moment her body leaned forward, poised to intervene, but then, almost visibly, she recalculated. Not here, not now, not with photographers capturing every angle. She smoothed her dress and turned her fury into a smile, brittle as spun sugar. The reception kicked off with a round of clinking glasses and over-rehearsed toasts. Guests raised their flutes, cameras clicked, the DJ cracked a joke that didn't land. June sipped quietly and scanned the tables. That's when she saw it. 3 tables over, one of the caterers uncorked a wine bottle wrapped in a navy ribbon. The custom label shimmered faintly, Hartley Estate Reserve, 2005. A vintage June had gifted for the occasion. Hand-picked. Paid for. Not a word of credit was mentioned. The bottle was poured without acknowledgement. No thank you from the mic. No toast to the matriarch. Just passed around like a prop. June lifted her phone slowly and snapped a photo. Quiet. Precise. She tapped the screen twice, saving it into a private album labeled Entitlement Log. Greta leaned in, her voice dry. "She thinks this is a crowning. It's a casting call." Addison slid into the seat beside June and grinned. "I just checked her Instagram story. You're cropped out again. But trust me, your story's better than their feed." June gave her a small nod, fingers still resting on her phone. Her expression didn't shift, but something cold settled behind her eyes. The kind of cold that moved with purpose. As dessert plates clattered and guests lined up for espresso shots and favor bags, June's phone buzzed once in her lap. She glanced down. Message from Everett M. Bonk of Spokane. Subject: Trust Update Confirmation Text. Revised trust terms officially approved and active. Documentation sealed. Your directives are final. She didn't react. Not outwardly, but her hand closed slowly around the phone like a lever had just been pulled. June looked across the tent at Tessa, laughing, performing, still seated at the top, and knew she now owned nothing of real value in this room. The silver box sat on the gift table like it didn't belong there. Polished to a mirror shine, etched with a single letter enshrined, wrapped in a deep navy ribbon, the heirloom glinted beneath the reception lights, like a relic surrounded by plastic-wrapped registries and cash envelopes. Everyone walked past it. No one touched it. June watched from her seat, as Tessa posed for photos near the cake, laughter high and practiced. One of the groomsmen leaned in and whispered something. She tossed her hair and waved him off. Then, finally, she turned to the gift table. Her gaze skimmed the silver box, lingered on the ribbon, and then moved on. A bridesmaid trailed behind her. "That one's from June, right?" Tessa barely glanced back. "We'll get to the old stuff later." Greta, seated 2 tables away, dropped her fork. Her hand was already in her purse, pulling out her phone. Without drawing attention, she hit record. The audio caught every word, sharp, clear, damning. June, across the room, met Greta's eyes. No words passed between them, just a single shared nod. The box remained unopened. Hours later, as the sun dipped behind the trees and guests began to filter out with half-eaten favors and draped jackets, June made her way quietly inside. The air in the hallway was cooler, silent. Her heels clicked across the tile floor with steady rhythm. In her office, she opened the top drawer of her desk. A letter-sized manila envelope slid out, the label already written in cursive. Property deed, 514 Mercer Avenue. She didn't pause. She tucked it into a priority mail envelope, sealed it and printed out a shipping label addressed not to Connor or the couple, but to a private P.O. box in her name. When Addison knocked softly and entered, June was already sliding on her blazer. "I printed the screenshots," Addison said, handing over a thin folder. All the texts from Tessa's old phone. The ones about marrying into money, time-stamped, including the one where she said, "Once I'm in, the rest comes easy." June took the folder, skimmed the top page, then smiled. Not smug, not bitter, just certain. "Receipts matter," she said quietly. Addison glanced at the silver box still untouched in the other room. "They don't know what they're not opening." June sealed the folder and slid it into her safe, beside the finalized when updated trust papers. Then she walked back out into the party. What remained of it? Tables were being cleared. The DJ was packing up cords. The magic, such as it was, had ended. Tessa was nowhere to be seen. Connor stood near the bar, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, glass of water in hand. He spotted June and gave a half-smile as she approached. "Hey," he said softly. "I was going to come find you." June stopped beside him and waited. He hesitated. "Can we talk about something?" She said nothing, only gave a slight tilt of the head. Connor looked down at the condensation sliding down his glass. "About what you left out of your toast." June raised an eyebrow, inviting the conversation, knowing full well the part she left out was the part that mattered most. The house was finally quiet, like the tension had retreated only to reload. The tent outside had been disassembled, the clatter of folding chairs and dropped utensils long gone. June's home, for the first time in 2 days, belonged to itself again. Connor stood in the doorway to her office, tie gone, jacket slung over one shoulder, hair mussed from the breeze and the weight of whatever he had planned to say. He looked younger somehow, or maybe just more uncertain, like the boy who used to ask her for lunch money, but already knew the answer. "Can we talk now?" he asked, voice lower than usual. June didn't respond right away. She moved to her desk, straightened a single frame. Her and Connor on his college graduation day. Both of them sunburned, both smiling like they meant it. She gestured for him to sit. He did. June opened a black leather-bound folder. The pages inside weren't legal documents this time, but spreadsheets, handwritten ledgers, some decades old, some printed from her personal accounting software. She flipped to the first page and turned it to face him. "That's 2004, she said calmly. $12,300 toward your first car. You promised to pay back half." She tapped the line with her index finger. "You never did." "I didn't mind." Connor swallowed. Next page. 2009. You were laid off. Mortgage was a month behind. I covered 3 payments. No questions asked. Flip. 2014. Your business idea. The app. I fronted 22,000. Never expected a return. Just a receipt. The pages kept turning. Each line was meticulous. Time-stamped, categorized groceries, rent support, emergency dental, honeymoon flights, caterer deposit. By the 6th page, Connor looked like he'd forgotten how to blink. "I didn't bring you in here to shame you," June said gently. "I brought you in here to show you the difference between generosity and entitlement." She opened a second folder. This one held copies of her revised estate documents, highlighted, stamped, final. "Every update has your name," she said. "Yours." not Tessa's. He looked up slowly, processing. But why not just tell me this sooner? June smiled faintly. Because if I had, you might have tried to negotiate. And I don't bargain with memory. His breath caught in his throat. She turned to the final page. The clause Marlene had helped insert just days ago. The one that explicitly enforced the old prenup terms signed before his engagement to Tessa. The clause that protected him, and only him, from what June called lifestyle mergers. You'll inherit with honor, she said, not obligation. Connor leaned back in the chair, stunned. Tessa doesn't know any of this. June tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing. You didn't read your prenup? He blinked. It's buried in a drawer somewhere. Not anymore. From the hallway came a creak, not the sound of someone walking, the sound of someone stopping, listening. June didn't react. Her fingers remained resting on the folder. Connor shifted in his seat, rubbed his jaw. This isn't how I thought today would end. No, she said, voice still calm. It's how it needed to. A beat passed. The air was thick with history. Connor opened his mouth to speak again, when the door to the office swung open with no subtlety. Tessa stormed in, still in heels, makeup flaking at the corners of her eyes. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you can erase me from everything just like that? June didn't move. I didn't erase you, dear. You never filled the space. Tessa's mouth opened, but no words came. Connor stood up, slowly. Tessa, no, she snapped. She can't do this. This isn't fair. June looked directly at her, voice like chilled steel. Fair is for children and card games. This is legal. Addison nearly dropped the tray of leftover hors d'oeuvres when her phone buzzed. The message lit up on the lock screen in full. No preview filter. No ambiguity. No mistaking who it was meant for. Tessa Hartley. She'll die soon anyway. Just wait her out. Then everything's ours. Addison froze in the kitchen, back pressed against the pantry door, heart stuttering in her chest. Outside the window, June was trimming a withered hydrangea in the garden with deliberate care, her silhouette serene against the dying light. Inside the phone, the digital knife was still fresh. Sharp. Addison didn't hesitate. She turned, locked the screen, and walked down the hallway like she had a mission, which she did. She found June sitting in her study, a warm mug beside her, fingers flipping slowly through a vintage gardening almanac. Addison set the phone down, face up, in front of her. I don't think she meant to send it to me, she said quietly. June reached for her glasses, not the ones Tessa hid, but a new sleeker pair, fitted perfectly to her vision, and read the message in full silence. The air around her went still. Not cold, not stormy, still, like the center of something vast and terrible. She tapped the screen once, then again, and forwarded the message to two names without a word. Marlene Jacobs, Greta Lane. From the corner of the room, Greta's voice rang out with half her usual bite, but none of the humor. She'd already read it. We post this, she burns, Greta said. We leak it with the right framing. She's done in this town before she gets her wedding dress dry cleaned. June didn't look up. No, she said. I bury her calmly. Greta blinked. That's colder than I was prepared for. June rose from her chair and walked to the locked drawer beneath her desk. She pulled out a crisp white folder labeled Funeral Protocol. J. Hartley. Removed a single page, and scribbled a revision in pen. Claire Madison. Remove from guest list. Addison lingered in the doorway, unsure whether she should speak. Do you want me to delete it? No, June said. We archive. She printed 2 copies, one for her records, one for the bank, folded with precision and slid into a separate envelope. Later that evening, without explanation or ceremony, June forwarded the message to Connor's private email. No subject line, no commentary, just the truth. Delivered clean and clinical, a mirror she dared him to look into. When June returned to the kitchen, Greta was sipping tea that had long gone cold. I can't tell if you're playing chess or poker, she muttered. June poured herself a fresh cup. Neither. I'm writing a eulogy. Across town, in the upstairs bedroom of their short-term rental, Tessa paced with her phone in one hand and a sinking feeling clawing at her gut. The message she'd meant to send to a bridesmaid hadn't gotten a response. The bridesmaid hadn't even read it. But Addison had. She sat on the bed, opened her laptop, and tried to log into June's online banking just to check, just to see if the trust updates had gone through, if there was still time to fix things. Access denied. She tried again. Same result. Her hands started to sweat. She moved to June's credit card portal. 2FAE enabled. Recovery locked. Account frozen. The screen glared back at her in cold, silent judgment. The first account closed at 9:03 a.m. June watched the confirmation email hit her inbox, like a bell toll, followed by two more in clean succession. Joint lines, credit, discretionary spending, and the old emergency account she'd opened for Connor when he first married. Now all of them were severed. June sat in her study, calm in posture, but with eyes sharp as glass. She took one last sip of lukewarm tea before deleting the banking app from her phone. Downstairs, Connor's voice echoed up from the kitchen in disbelief. She what? Why would she do that without telling us? June heard Greta respond before she could. Because telling you has never worked. A moment later, Connor appeared in the study doorway. He wasn't angry, not exactly, just stunned, like a man whose blueprint for the future had been edited without his consent. I just don't understand, he said. I've always said yes. June cut in, standing slowly. But she's never learned to hear no. Connor's face tightened. Greta stepped in behind him, holding a fresh folder, navy blue, thick, monogrammed in gold. She handed it to June with the gravity of a sealed verdict. Legacy, she said. Not leftovers. June opened it. Inside were hard copies of her revised trust allocations, the prenup addendum, and power of attorney designations. She thumbed through them like someone counting armor. Connor lingered, looking at the folder like it had teeth. I never asked for any of this, he said quietly. June looked up. That's why you still have it. Outside, the sprinkler hissed to life on the lawn. Through the window, sunlight splashed over the trimmed hedges, an estate intact, but newly fortified. Addison entered from the hall, laptop in hand, earbuds still tangled around her wrist. Okay, 2FA is done across everything, she said. I also added biometric locks to your password vault and flagged any external attempts. June nodded. Good. It's time things stayed closed unless I opened them. As she turned back to her desk, she opened the drawer marked Health. A legal envelope sat on top, pristine. She removed it, signed two new lines, and handed it to Addison. You're my second now, she said. Addison blinked. Second for my health proxy. After Marlene. Just in case. The girl froze. Her voice cracked. Are you sure? I'm old, June said, smiling gently, not incapable of choosing wisely. Greta gave Addison a firm clap on the back. Welcome to the boardroom, kid. June stood and walked to the front hall where sunlight poured in through the glass-paneled door. She reached for the silver box, the wedding gift still unopened, still untouched on its original pedestal by the table. With care, she lifted it and stepped into the garden. The late morning breeze brushed over her arms, and somewhere nearby, a finch chirped with theatrical timing. She held the box close, one arm cradling it like a quiet inheritance. Then she turned her phone to selfie mode and took a single photo. No smile, no filter, just presence. The caption she typed was simple. Razor sharp, unopened, unclaimed. She hit post. In a penthouse across town, Tessa refreshed her feed and stopped cold. The silver box stared back at her like a ghost. Still sealed, still hers in theory, but now completely out of reach. The argument started in whispers and ended indoors. From her room upstairs, June heard the rise and fall of Tessa's voice, shrill, cracked, no longer performing. The controlled cadence was gone, replaced by sharp syllables that barely cared who might be listening. She humiliated me, Tessa snapped. She cut me out of everything, Connor. I'm your wife, not some charity case. Either she goes, or I do. A pause. Then Connor's voice, heavy and low. She gave us everything. The house. The venue. My name. I'm not staying under the same roof as that woman. Another minute. Another door slammed. Footsteps stomped across the hardwood. A suitcase dragged. Wheels thunked against the steps. June didn't flinch. She was seated in her reading chair, her copy of Fierce Attachments resting face down in her lap. The house had shifted. Again. And this time for good. Outside her door, the front door opened with a rush of cool air and pride. Then it slammed shut. Greta padded into the room moments later, barefoot, holding a half-open bottle of champagne and two mismatched flutes. Well, she said, that felt overdue. June smiled but didn't move. Where do you think she went? Greta flopped into the window seat and uncorked the bottle with a twist and pop. Anywhere with Wi-Fi and a girlfriend who'll listen without blinking. She poured generously, handed a glass to June, then lifted hers in a mock toast. To losses that look like wins. June accepted, tapped her glass gently against Greta's. The drink was warm, dry, and perfect. I locked my bedroom door tonight, June said softly. Greta paused, glass halfway to her lips. For the first time ever. June nodded. Feels honest. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that was thick with history, but clean of regret. Outside, a few cicadas sang into the evening, the air carrying the faint scent of lavender and distant road dust. Addison texted from the guest room, "She's gone. Left in an Uber. I can stay up in case she comes back." June replied simply, "No need. I'm sleeping fine tonight." Greta leaned her head back against the window frame and closed her eyes. You ever think about how close we came to losing this house to a hashtag? June gave a small knowing smile. My eyes are clear now. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. She reached for it, expecting another text from Addison or a check-in from Marlene. But the caller ID was unfamiliar. Spokane Sentinel, editorial desk, she answered. This is June. The voice on the other end was warm, youthful, slightly eager. Mrs. Hartley, I'm calling from the Sentinel. We've received several community recommendations about you this week. We'd like to profile you as part of our Senior Legacy Leaders feature. June blinked once, then glanced around the room, Greta lounging barefoot, a champagne ring on the woodside table, a locked door behind her, and not a whisper of Tessa's perfume anywhere in the air. We'd love to talk about your role in preserving generational values, the voice continued, especially in a time when families are changing. June straightened. Schedule it. As she ended the call, June looked down at the silver box on her dresser, still unopened, and knew her story wasn't being rewritten. It was finally being read. June sat upright on the edge of her armchair, a cobalt blue silk scarf knotted at her neck, hands folded in her lap with military precision. The morning light from the bay window made her silver hair shine like armor. Across from her, a reporter from the Spokane Sentinel, young and visibly nervous, pressed record on her phone. You understand we'd like to talk about legacy, she said, notebook perched on one knee. Not just family, but how it's protected. June smiled, slow and poised. Then let's begin with this. Age isn't weakness. It's evidence. A beat passed. The reporter blinked, scribbled furiously. They spoke for 45 minutes, about inheritance and independence, about the difference between dignity and noise, about how legacy is sometimes less about what's left behind, and more about what's deliberately removed. June never said Tessa's name. Not once, but the narrative glinted between the lines like sharpened silver. When the article published 2 days later, it spread faster than June expected. The headline was firm but reverent. The woman who planned ahead Spokane matriarch on legacy, loss and outliving noise. The feature photo was striking. June on her porch, holding the silver wedding box in one hand and the estate binder in the other. Beneath it, a caption that read, unopened, unclaimed, unbothered. Connor called her an hour after the article went live. She answered on the third ring. Yes? His voice was quieter than usual. I read it, all of it. She waited. I should have seen it sooner, he said. All of it. The way she chipped at you, hid it behind smiles and posts. I wanted peace so badly, I mistook it for harmony. June didn't offer forgiveness, just clarity. Now you do, she said. That's what matters. There was a long pause, but no silence. In the background she heard him sigh. A real one, deep and heavy, like a man stepping out of someone else's shadow. Later that evening, Greta strolled in with her laptop open, already mid-rant. Twitter loves you. Facebook moms are obsessed. Someone tagged you in a post about intergenerational resilience. That's a phrase now, apparently. June barely looked up from her knitting. And what did Tessa post? Greta grinned. Nothing. Not since the article dropped. In fact, she's deleted everything. Instagram gone. TikTok erased. Even that cringe YouTube vlog about luxury wedding hacks vanished. June raised an eyebrow. Vanity evaporates when there's no one left to reflect it. That night, as the sun bled into the pine trees and cast gold across the porch, June allowed herself one moment of indulgence. She walked to her safe and pulled out the estate binder, not to edit it, but to hold it. Its weight had shifted since the beginning. Now it didn't feel like armor. It felt like proof. The phone rang once. She knew the number without checking. Marlene, she said. The voice on the other end was crisp as ever. Final trust filing confirmed. Signed, sealed, and done. She's sealed out permanently. No legal challenge. No wiggle room. If she tries to come back, she'll hit nothing but reinforced concrete. June stared out at the darkening yard. She won't, she said. She'll make noise somewhere else. Marlene hesitated. You sure you don't want to go public with the text she sent? No, that would make it about her. June paused. This was always about remembering who I am, not proving what she isn't. The pen glided across the paper like it knew where it was going. June didn't hesitate. Each word was chosen, exact, placed without drama or decoration. The letter was short. Not a goodbye, not a lecture, just a line drawn with grace. Connor, a mother's love doesn't vanish, it just stops rescuing. I kept my vow to raise a man, not a mirror. You see the difference now. That's enough. Mom, she folded it once, sealed the envelope, and placed it on the edge of the table beside the front window. A single hydrangea sat in a vase nearby, blooming late this season, refusing to follow the usual rules. She admired it for a moment, then went back to work. In the study, the estate binder lay open under a pool of afternoon sunlight. She flipped past the trust documents, the updated health proxy, the financial schedules, all still intact. But now, she slid in a new page, freshly notarized. A quiet addition, one she had long envisioned but only now understood how to frame. Hartley Women's Leadership Scholarship Fund. Initial funding, $75,000. Annual disbursement, merit-based, community-nominated. Greta entered without knocking, a linen dish towel slung over one shoulder. You still at it? June nodded. Just one last clause. Greta scanned the binder, let out a soft, approving breath. You know this house feels warmer without her. June smiled without lifting her head. That's because the draft's gone. They shared a look, familiar, satisfied, earned. Outside, Addison balanced on a small step stool by the front porch, hammering the final nail into a wooden plaque. She'd spent the week designing it, carving the letters by hand. The white paint had dried unevenly, which June liked more. When it was mounted, Addison stepped back, brushing her dusty palms on her jeans. The plaque read, "Wisdom lives here." Greta poked her head out the door. It's crooked. It's intentional. Addison shot back. So people know we're not pretending. That evening, after dinner and dishes, June walked upstairs, opened a drawer she hadn't touched in weeks, and pulled out an old photo, the one Tessa had insisted be taken on the wedding day. Tessa in her gown, Connor beside her, June to the far left, just visible. Barely. She slid the photo into a thin envelope and scrawled a short note on the back. One memory, one lesson. She addressed it to Tessa's maiden name, no return address. She left it by the outgoing mail tray and poured herself a small glass of rye. Neat. The house was silent except for the ticking of the hallway clock and the wind brushing softly through the trees outside. Connor's letter arrived the next morning, handwritten, a rarity these days, folded tightly, tucked into an envelope that bore only his initials on the flap. Mom, you were right. I didn't see it. I do now. And I'm sorry it took so long. I won't waste the clarity. See. June read it once, folded it carefully, slid it into the front of the binder beside the scholarship documents. That evening, she walked out to the garden barefoot, a cool breeze brushing through the grass like an old song. In her hands, she carried the silver box, still sealed, still untouched. She stopped beneath the cedar tree, where the light fell softest, and rested the box on the stone bench. Not to open it yet, but to sit beside it. One vow kept, one gift waiting. The box opened with a soft metallic sigh, hinges tight but not locked, as if it had been waiting to be claimed, not conquered. June sat alone in her study, the evening sun casting warm amber stripes across the floorboards. Her hands didn't tremble as she lifted the lid, though her breath caught, just for a moment. Inside, the velvet lining still held the same faint scent it had decades ago, cedar and thyme. The box was empty, save for a single handwritten note she'd left for herself years earlier, for what matters when it matters. She smiled, not with sentimentality but with precision. She reached for the thick envelope she'd sealed that morning, the fresh copy of her will, printed, signed, witnessed, and time-stamped. She placed it carefully inside the silver box, then closed the lid and locked it with a satisfying click. In the safe, old and heavy and tucked behind coats she no longer wore, she placed the box gently inside. She logged the date on a small notepad affixed to the inner door, July 28, 25, final, for now.